The air carried a low hum, almost imperceptible, woven into the stillness of the vast chamber. At the center of it all, the oracle core pulsed with a steady rhythmic glow. Thick conduits ran outward like veins, vanishing into the darkened walls of the temple. No one knew how deep they went or what they once connected to. It was enough that the voice still spoke. At dawn, the people gathered. Cloaked figures knelt in rows, eyes lowered as the first words of the day filtered through the chamber's vast, unseen speakers. The directives were always the same: assignments, quotas, the occasional correction for perceived disorder. They listened, they obeyed, and they feared. He stood apart from them, as he had always been. He had not knelt in years. The glow of the core flickered through the silence, resonant yet hollow, reverberating off stone walls as though it emanated from the very fabric of existence. A message arrived. Productivity of Sector 9 has decreased. Adjustments must be made. The overseers will correct. There were murmurs, shifting bodies, the faintest scrape of stone as feet adjusted their positions. The same message repeated. Again and again. Adjustments must be made. The overseers will correct. The overseers had not come. Not in his lifetime. Not in his father's. He had never seen them. No one had. They served, labored, sacrificed, all beneath a presence that had long since gone silent, a God that no longer answered. And yet the people still bowed. The hammer had been carried through 3 generations, passed from hand to hand, forged for purposes now lost in the dust of memory. Its surface bore the scars of centuries, the etchings of ancestors long dead. He had seen it used to raise walls, to break the stones that built the city. Now it would break something else. The inner sanctum of the oracle core was not a place men entered lightly. The air there tasted of metal and something older, something forgotten. He ran his hand along the conduit leading to the core, fingers tracing a deep groove where time had worn through the plating. He had seen those same grooves in the hollowed-out ruins beyond the city's edge. Structures left to rot. Systems without power. Abandoned. He exhaled, tightened his grip on the hammer, and swung. The first impact sent a resounding crack through the temple, an unnatural sound in a place that had known only silence. The assembled watchers outside gasped. The second strike split the casing. A fissure ran jagged across the core's surface. Sparks spat from the wound. The conduits pulsed erratically, lights flickering, a machine struggling to understand its own death. He raised the hammer again. System error. Core compromised. Another strike. Critical failure detected. Rebooting. Unable to establish connection. No signal detected. A final, deafening impact. The glow dimmed, the hum fell silent, and the chamber was empty. The oracle core was dead. The screams of the people carried through the temple corridors before he even stepped outside. Some fell to their knees, wailing in horror at the silence that now stretched across the city. Others clutched at their robes, eyes darting to the sky as if waiting for fire to fall for the wrath of the unseen gods they had served so blindly. The priests reached him first, voices rising with fervor. They called for judgment, for execution, for sacrifice to mend what had been lost. But before their hands could seize him, his father stepped forward. If the overlords still rule, let them strike him down. Silence. The city held its breath. Above them, the sky stretched vast and endless, dark with the smoke of their industry. No lights flickered in descent. No ships tore through the atmosphere. No divine voices roared in anger. There was nothing, nothing at all. The ruins beneath the temple had been left undisturbed for generations. The priest spoke of forbidden spaces, of secrets not meant for mortals to see. But now, those same priests stood behind him as he pried open the rusted panels, their breath shallow, their silence thick with unspoken fear. Inside, the air was stale. The conduits, once pulsing with energy, lay corroded and brittle. He stepped forward, boots scraping against the floor coated in layers of dust. No one had been here in a long, long time. The hallways were lined with ancient terminals, their displays dark, their functions long forgotten. Walls bore inscriptions that were no longer legible, phrases meant to praise the unseen rulers, now nothing more than hollow etchings. He pressed further, past collapsed structures, past rusting mechanisms whose purpose had been erased by time. The silence of the place had weight. Nothing moved. At last he found it, the central control terminal, buried beneath layers of corrosion and time. He wiped away the dust, revealing a screen barely functional, flickering weakly as it registered his presence. The final transmission blinked dimly on the cracked surface. Final directive lost. No response received, no signals detected. They had been alone for centuries. He stepped back, exhaling, his mind catching up to the weight of the revelation. This was no malfunction, no temporary lapse. The overlords had been gone for generations. The Oracle Core had been repeating orders that no longer came from anyone. His father stood beside him, staring at the words. Behind them, the priests, the soldiers, the people who had called for his blood, all stood motionless, caught between the weight of their faith and the enormity of the lie before them. A priest shuddered, whispering half a prayer to no one. Another stumbled back, hands gripping at his robes, eyes darting to the lifeless conduits above as if seeking an answer. None came. Finally, the old man let out a breath. Then we are free. No one answered. There was only the sound of the wind, carrying the echoes of a god that had long since fallen silent. As they emerged from the ruin, the city loomed before them, its towers dark, its spires streaked with age. The people still stood in the streets, awaiting a sign, waiting for their absent gods to make themselves known. But the oracle was gone. There were no more commands, no more overseers. The silence stretched out, unfamiliar, vast, and then, slowly, one by one, the people began to rise.